podcast is brought to you by LMU Munich.
Okay, then let me briefly talk about, what we have done. Okay. Okay, just to, re-emphasize it again, to reiterate again. So we started with the problem area. So we explored, had interviews and so on, because we wanted to get kind of concrete insights on, where can we start our innovation. Then we, tried to focus on one particular problem in that problem area where we thought, okay, this could be interesting. Then we crafted these how might we questions, which was kind of the trigger for our ideation process. Then we ideated lots of different ideas. And then we decided, okay, according to different matrices and Venn diagrams and so on, what could be the most, valuable idea now. And then we went into prototyping and tested, or tried to come up with different kind of experiments on, what we want to validate about our assumptions. And we could say, well, now we're done, basically. So we have run through that process, but as I mentioned again and again, this chart doesn't show it very well. It's an iterative process, right? So we can go back now based on the data that we have collected through our testings and see, okay, did we actually, achieve or solve the problem that we wanted to solve with our idea. So it's an ongoing process. Nevertheless, so just that you've seen this once, okay, so this would be just, so what we've done in the last 2.5 days is just the first step of what's called, three fits or 3 steps, basically. So the first one is here. So what's called, and I mentioned this already, the problem solution fit. So what's actually the problem and how does the solution fit together? Okay, so that's kind of the first matching. The second step then would be, when you come to execution, is that you actually have to find a market, because what you have discovered now was kind of a problem. And I mentioned this, so with extreme users and kind of not the average person. And the second step then would be kind of the product market fit, where you have to figure out, is there actually a market, like a large scale market for your product, your service, and whatsoever. And then the third step would be, okay, what's the business model behind that? Okay, just to give you an understanding how this process works, where we are right now, and that you can situate yourself in what we've done in the last 2.5 days. Okay, so we climbed this first ladder and maybe a little bit of the second one, but as you can see, there are some more ladders to climb up. Okay, so this is basically the killer tool. So this is the tool that everybody uses for you to capture your business model. Okay, so if, beyond these 2.5 days, so either you win the prize and get the voucher for the startup support, or you nevertheless want to, continue on, executing that idea that you have now thought about, this would be the tool that you would work with next. Okay, so this is called the business model canvas. Can I just ask, has anyone seen that before? No. Okay, most no. Yes, Renata has seen it before. Okay. So essentially, what a business model is it's an attempt to capture value. Okay, so this is kind of the abstract understanding of a business model. Okay, so how do we capture value? And this canvas, which was designed by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pigneur a couple of years ago, is essentially a visualization of everything that is going on in a business. Okay, and as you can see, it has 9 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and as you can see, it is kind of separated into 2. So here's one side and here's another side. And we don't have to go into detail with this. I just want to have that you have seen it once. Okay, so what's the most important thing about the business model, and this is where we actually started, is here. Okay, this is the customer. Okay, so you always have to be aware of who is your customer, and this is what we've done with understanding customers and users and so on. So this is the customer. So here, so this is actually a canvas, and so for example, if you're interested in it, a Mural also has a business model canvas in it that you can fill out, and yeah, it's basically, you work with post-its in these different segments. So usually you start with, having a customer, having a good understanding of the customer, and then you can use everything that we've done in terms of personas, of empathy maps, and so on, to understand or get a better understanding of who that actually is. The second most important aspect of the business model canvas and of each business model is, can you actually see it? Okay, sorry. Here is the customer. Sorry, you couldn't see my mouse. Let me just annotate it a little bit. Okay, here is the customer. Very important. The second one, most important one, is here. What do you think that could be? The gift, the present.
The product.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than the product. It's called the value proposition. I'll write this here. The value proposition, and this is kind of the offer, the value that you generate with your idea, your project, your business, your startup, whatsoever. Okay, so this is kind of the heart of your business model, because this is how you capture value. Okay, so this could be, we provide rooms for moms who need a timeout or whatever. Okay, so this is your value proposition. And these two aspects are kind of the most essential, but also the most difficult parts to get right. And this is why we have done all of this problem solution fit, and would go into product market fit to see if that actually connects, right? Because sometimes, or most of the time, this doesn't connect in startups and in companies actually. Okay, so what's related to this is kind of the relationship that you, with your value proposition, have to the customer. Okay, so this means, are you friendly to them? How do you communicate with them? Do you need email support or whatever? So kind of thinking about all the relationships that you have with your customer. Yeah, so yeah. And the other one is the question, so how do you deliver that product to the customer? So what are the channels that you need to get that value proposition, the product, the service, whatever, to the customer? Okay, so this could be also through apps, through delivery. If you have a product, you send it to them, and so on. And it's really important, if you, depending on your business model and depending on your business, that you are aware of how you actually get that from A to B to your customer. Now, the last part that is missing from this side is how you make money. So the revenue side. Sorry, it's really messy. Okay, so how do I make money out of that? Okay, and as you can see, this is usually the positive side. And I'm not a neuro psychologist, but usually people say that the business model canvas has, like our brain, kind of two sides, and one is kind of the positive emotional side. So don't nail me down on this, and because this is how we make money, this is how we deliver the product, and so on. And so this is the positive side. Obviously, there's also a more rational side, and this is the left side of the business model here. Okay, and in my experience, this one is really the most important or most difficult one for startups to understand in an idea phase, because this is called key activities. Okay, so what do you as a startup, as an organization, as a project actually do? And this is really difficult for a lot of people to answer, because they say, well, we do everything. We do everything. We build the product, we deliver it, we do the website, we do the packaging, and so on. And obviously, if you map that on a, 10-hour day, or more realistically for a startup, 14 to 16-hour day, you can really, very quickly notice that you can't do that all the time, right? So what's important is that you understand, what, and this is why you use post-its for this canvas, if you fill it out, to understand, okay, what do I actually need to, make that work, so to make that flow? Because sometimes I don't need to, package the things, or I don't, if you are taking a bad example like Uber, or like Airbnb, I don't need to, own the apartments. I don't need to own the cars, right? And this goes back into this segment. So what are the key resources that I need? Okay, what resources do I need? So for the app, what's it called? App here, right? So do you actually need the servers that run the app? Do you actually need the programmers that need the app, and so on? Because in very smart businesses and smart startups, you simply outsource this. Okay, it's very questionable from an ethical point of view, obviously, but a lot of business models try to outsource a lot of what's on the left side, because all of that creates costs, right? So this is here, down here. So the right side is creating revenue, and I just realized this is the messiest picture I've ever drawn. Sorry, but I hope you can make sense of it. Sense out of it. So here you make money, and here is everything that you have to pay for. Okay, so what are the costs involved? And obviously, depending on what is in here, these go up or down. Okay, and obviously every business tries to get these as much down as possible by outsourcing a lot of that. But again, ethically questionable. The last one, and I think this is also an interesting one, is called key partnerships. Because here you can say, okay, what could be interesting partnerships? And I think this is an interesting direction in which business is growing, right? So it's not only about, okay, I need to do the product on my own, and don't cooperate, because there's a lot of cooperation going on. So for example, if you want to build a chatbot, for example, it would make sense to ask Facebook for a cooperation, right? Because they have the assets, they have the skills, they have the money. So think in these terms of assets and partnerships, because sometimes that can raise your or scale your startup really, really quickly, or your idea, and get it into implementation actually. Okay, that was a bunch. I just wanted to briefly talk to you about this very, very, let me check, very clear and lucid business model canvas. Do you have any questions about this? So as I mentioned again, so this will not be part of the evaluation criteria. I just wanted to, I think it doesn't hurt to have seen the business model canvas once, because it's a very helpful tool for different projects. You can use that for your research projects as well, right? So how do you deliver that? How much does it cost, and so on? So it's a really very helpful tool to make something very complex, very concrete. Yes, I can give you an example of a business model canvas. I don't have one here, but I can send you one where it's filled out, basically. Is that what you mean, Ollie? So just a filled out business model?
I'd like to see a real example with the aspects that we explained. It's so important to have this in real life, in something that it could be concrete. Mm-hmm. You explained very well, but the example will help a lot.
Yeah, sure. I will send you. I will add to the slides one example if you want, if that's okay. I just didn't want to stress or give that too much time, because it won't be part of the the final pitches. Okay. But I'm very happy to share some examples.
Thank you very much.
There's also a very interesting tool that was also developed by Alexander Osterwalder. He has kind of like little method cards, so little cards that contain, so it's I think 140 cards, and on these cards are basically all the business models that are existing. And this is really interesting. I can also send that to you.
Thank you.
It's very helpful. Yeah, I can definitely. So it's a very interesting topic, and if you look at the data out there actually, and look at where innovation comes from, research shows that the most innovation actually comes from a so-called business model innovation. Okay, so innovation doesn't happen anymore so much in technology and products and services, but most innovation starts or happens here, where companies like Uber, for example, or like Airbnb shift or change the business model that historically worked. So for example, just to give you an example, okay, so the business model of, let's say a hotel chain like Sheraton, worked like this. So they had a lot of costs here, obviously. And what Airbnb did is basically, simply shift these costs because they didn't have to own the places anymore, right? Because everybody is now a apartment owner, so everybody is part of the assets of Airbnb, and that was a really smart, obviously again questionable move. But if you look at all the so-called unicorns, so unicorns are companies that are worth more than $1 billion. All of them have tried to integrate a business model innovation and try in terms of outsourcing usually one of these resources and saying, okay, we don't have to pay the workers because they need to pay, will be paid by the customer themselves. So they changed how that all of these relationships work, and this is kind of the innovation that they have. Again, ethically very questionable to some extent. Okay, but I will send you an example where this is filled out, basically.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Are there any more questions about the business model canvas? And maybe just to emphasize that again, so usually you have, startups have one of these canvases printed out and in their offices. And the basic idea how this works is that you use Post-its for each of these segments. And just to make you understand how you practically work with that. And if you have different customer groups, you use different colors for these Post-its because you have a different relationship with them. Okay, so the value proposition for the Uber drivers is different than from the customers that use Uber. Okay, so you really have to differentiate in these. And also you need Post-its because obviously it's a dynamic tool. Okay, it changes all the time. So your business model always changes. And this again, this is how this is kind of connected to this idea of lean startup. So all the Post-its that you post on the business model canvas are again assumptions. Okay, so our assumption is our customer is this, it's Nina, she's 25, blah, 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 right? And so the business model basically is also clustering your hypothesis that you have about your business model. Then you have to, again, learn how it works and, test it and see if that actually is true. So it's basically a guideline for you to go, to proceed with your business. And especially if you have just started a business or an idea, it's also a very helpful tool to just visualize everything that you do and structure it, because sometimes it can be very messy. So I think we do this and that and that and that, and having it on the wall or in a virtual space, it just helps you to structure your thinking to a large extent. All right, if there are no more questions, then, oh, sorry. I briefly wanted to talk about impact. So I actually did not include that until this morning because I actually wanted to focus on innovation. And a lot of people would say, okay, impact is not part of innovation, but where I usually work, impact is kind of the cornerstone of innovation. And especially since we're talking about One Health challenges, I briefly wanted to give you a couple of tools and mindsets that help you to maybe grapple with these complexities, maybe even more so. Because what we see where I work is that a lot of people just come from the concept of design thinking and desirability, and they just create innovations that are just desirable, but they have no understanding of the actual impact, positive or negative, of the innovations that they create. And this is always something that we really stress, right? So always be aware of the impact that you want to create. Now, one very, very basic, it's not even a tool set, but it's a perspective maybe to understand the impact that you have are obviously these, right? The Sustainable Development Goals. Can I just ask, is there anyone who hasn't heard about the SDGs before?
I haven't.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Okay, just in a nutshell, so the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are 17 goals that were announced in 2015, I think. So they were, it's a second step after the Millennium Goals by the United Nations. And they were kind of co-created with civil societies, research, and so on. And they basically are a guideline of 17 key areas where it's important to have specific goals to to achieve sustainable development, it's called, and the corridor is until 2030, right? So it's also called the Agenda 2030, and it's very nice because it's very colorful, and you can see 17 goals, and maybe we have some experts on the SDGs, so it's basically aligned like a burger, and so you have the top, which are kind of social goals. Then you have the middle, the meat, patty, and these are economic goals. And down there, it's usually said, it's kind of environmental, or everything else, like peace and justice. So everything else that's not social or economic. And 17 is partnership for the goals. So just to give you an understanding of how they are kind of separated to some extent. And this is really helpful. A lot of companies use that nowadays to assess their impact. So a very helpful tool is simply saying, okay, my company tries to reduce inequality, so we work for SDG 10. Or my company is really good at industry, innovation, and infrastructure, so our SDG is number 9. Or we're working with a couple of companies that have several SDGs set up for them, and they ran through an SDG process and say, okay, we as a company can contribute to the fulfillment of good health and well-being and decent work and economic growth, and this is what we're heading for. Now, if you look at the challenges that you all tackled, I think to one extent, right, it could all be situated here, right? So good health and well-being. Are there any other SDGs that could come into, or could be relevant for your ideas, your innovations right now?
17.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the quality of education is also very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And also 5, gender equality.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can see, all of your projects have kind of different touch points with different SDGs, I would say. So maybe to some extent, all of you are working kind of in a educational sphere also as well, to some extent. It really depends on how you evolve the project. If you create jobs, obviously you can say we create jobs, which is kind of the I think most superficial SDG, and so on. What's interesting about these SDGs, because on the one hand you can use them in order to make more connections in terms of One Health interconnections, right? So if you are just focusing right now on health as a general issue, and then you could think about, okay, what could be other SDGs in the other spheres to create these connections in terms of One Health. At the same time, I briefly wanted to mention the limitations of the SDGs, because I have the feeling that this isn't mentioned enough, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, we have the SDGs and this is great, and now we have like specific guidelines which aren't that specific, that we have to commit to and fulfill, and then we are have achieved eternal peace by 2030. So this is another visualization of the SDGs, which is called the wedding cake, because for those of you who are married, obviously you want to have a great wedding cake with different chocolate layers and fancy sugary things on top. But this has been done by researchers, I think from environmental sciences, and they basically said, okay, a problem with this is that they're all equal. Okay, so is number 8, for example, has it the same, and we see that right now, does it have the same importance as 13, for example? Shouldn't 13 be more important than, let's say, I don't know, 3, or 2 or whatever. At the same time, scholars have also pointed out that there are contradictions in between the SDGs. So for example, I don't know if you heard about that study that showed that, not SDG number 1, so no poverty, so we cannot alleviate poverty and bring everybody out of poverty into the middle class or working class, while at the same time fulfilling the climate agreement, right? Because that will cause so much carbon emissions and so on. So what's interesting and what's most of the time left out is kind of the interconnections between the SDGs and kind of the contradictions. And I think this is where One Health as an approach can be really fruitful. And this is why I like this graph, because it really shows you, the base of everything is kind of the ecological sphere, right? So climate action, life on land, life on water, and so life below water, and so on. And then above that is kind of the social sphere, where we have decent work and economic growth and so on, but also health and so on. So this is kind of the top or the middle layer, and then the top layer is kind of the economical issues. And through that runs SDG 17. So the partnership of bringing that all together and making it stick. So I really like that in terms of taking account of the complexity of the issue, right? So we can only focus on one issue, so health, while not looking at the environment or its repercussions or interconnections and so on. Okay, so I briefly wanted to, so this was one perspective on it, and I briefly wanted to show you what we mean by impact, actually, because impact is also kind of one of these buzzwords right now. So everybody uses impact, and hardly anyone or everybody has a different understanding of it. So what we think about when we think about impact is this. So impact is change occurring in the lives of target audience as a result of an action. And this is important because a lot of companies say, well, my impact is I've reached so many people on Facebook. That's my impact. Or my impact is I sold that many iPhones. That's my impact that I have. Okay, but what's in the field of social entrepreneurship or SDG or impact business, this is not the right thing what we're talking about. So for us, it's always kind of this idea that we have a status quo, and then we have an intervention, and then this creates an impact. Okay, and the intervention is basically what you have been doing the last 2.5 days. Okay, the intervention is an innovation, basically trying with a innovation to change the behavior of people so that something positive comes out of that. And what's important is that obviously there should be a cause and effect relationship. So I can say I invented a new video game and this solved climate change. Okay, this is kind of scientifically unsound. Okay, so you always want to be sure that you are aware of the repercussions of your intervention and can kind of report that as well. At the same time, impact has so many different layers. Okay, so for instance, there are short, medium, and long-term repercussions. Okay, so I can do something that has an impact tomorrow, but it could also, if you look at climate change, so what we're doing right now will have an impact for the next 10,000 years of human history, right? So our carbon emissions will still be there in 10,000 years, or if you look at nuclear energy and so on. Then there are obviously direct and indirect aspects. So I can have a direct impact on you, maybe, or maybe innovation now has kind of, going through these innovation days might have an indirect impact on maybe how you change and how you, tackle problems differently. Obviously, there are intended and unintended impacts, which is, I think, really important in terms of One Health issues, right? So you really think about, what are the actual repercussions of my invention? Okay, I mentioned this already. So what's the repercussions of everybody using plastic? What do you call it? Masks? Yeah. What are the actual repercussions for the environment and so on? What's expected and unexpected? There can be obviously positive and negative impacts. Okay, so the mask obviously has a positive impact because it tries to contain contingency. At the same time, it has negative impacts in terms of environmental aspect. Temporary impermanence, subjectively experienced and objectively demonstrated, is also something that's really important. So what's the difference between I believe my life has been changed, and what are the objective data if that is actually true. And then what I always like to reiterate and emphasize is that impact should always be, and this is kind of normative, I'm sorry about this, but the goal of a lot of people that talk about impact and try to approach it from a business context is that they want to change a system. Okay, and I think this is really relevant for you in terms of One Health. So this is always for a lot of people that are called social entrepreneurs, and their goal is always to change a system for the better, basically. Okay, let me show you 2 tools that help you get a better understanding of how you actually make sense of your impact. So this is called the impact staircase because it looks like stairs. Okay, so you can go up the stairs, and it starts. I just start at the bottom. So the basic first thing that you have to map is what are the resources that you need. Okay, so resources are allocated. For example, your skills, your time, money, whatever you need. Okay, and then the second step is the activities take place. Okay, so for example, you open your me room and whatever. Then the second step would be target groups can be reached. Okay, can you actually put it off to market your me rooms for people that could be interested. The second or the third step would be then the target groups actually go there. Okay, and this is why design thinking is great, because we have ideally such a desirable product that the target groups actually accept the offers. And what's interesting is that a lot of organizations that talk about impact stop here. Okay, they say, okay, our impact was we reached so many people, we solved so many things. But it gets more interesting and arguably more difficult to get to the next level. Okay, so target groups actually change their abilities. Okay, so for a lot of people that work in this field of impact, it's really important to that people actually change their behavior. As an example, so one of the startups that we work with is called Recap. I don't know if you've heard about them. They basically have a system for coffee to go cups, and their basic idea is that they want to eradicate plastic cups or once used cups, and so they would look at the impact if people do they actually change their behavior in terms of do they buy their recups but also buy single-use plastic cups, or do they change it and just have the reusable cups? And the second step, and this is kind of connected, is so they change their abilities but also they change their behavior. And then the next step, which is even larger than that, so the situation of the target groups change. And you can see this is so it's based on the social reporting initiative, but this kind of comes out of a development context where it was more about social projects. So usually white people going to sub-Saharan Africa and trying to offer any services that they think would be helpful, and this tool was supposed to make them more legitimate and more efficient in doing that. And then obviously the holy grail of every impact chain is society changes. Okay, so what is the systemic level that changes and how can we reach that? So I really went through this quickly. Do you have any questions about this?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, the situation of target groups changing,
Mhm.
is it so mandatory?
So one of the I think one of the limitations, so every tool that we've done so far in these innovation days is just a tool. It's just a tool. Just like this, okay? And one of the limitations of this tool, I think, is that it's very causal, right? It's a very mechanistic tool. So it says, okay, first do this, then do that, then this happens, and this happened. And this is not how reality works, right? So reality is more complex than that. I think what it helps you with is, that you have a basic understanding of how you reach your impact, basically. Because what happened before we had these tools is that people, went to missionize in Africa and, said, okay, you have to accept these offers, and nothing happened. Okay, so a lot of money was wasted, a lot of, psychological and colonial violence happened because people would not take into account kind of the intervention that they thought about. And so this tool helps us to, be more transparent in our understanding of how we want to, affect a change, basically. So it isn't necessary that the situation of the target group changes, because it's just a rational, step before society changes. Does it answer your question?
Yeah. And the next question is input, output,
Yeah.
outcome, impact. If we are allocating or percentages.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to
Yeah.
allocate percentages. So let me show you the second tool that is kind of connected to this, because this is actually what you mentioned right now. So this is another visualization of this. So this is called the IOI, and I like this tool even more because it's even simpler and also has, it's very useful. Okay, and the same goes here. So it's not about percentages, it's more about, what do you put in, what comes out, or what's the output, what is the outcome, and how do we achieve the impact. And it's connected because, this is why I mentioned before, there should be a causal relationship in these activities, right? And it's also a planning tool to say, okay, this is what we need to create the app. This is what the output is. Okay, so we have built the app, and the outcome would be, okay, so people change their behavior, and then if you're successful, then the impact would be the problem was solved, and the app, we don't need the app anymore because society has changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just see. Okay. Does it make sense as a tool?
Yeah, it makes sense as a tool. So on the intervention aspect, do you have anything like you touch base with the consumer or customer to get an input or a fair idea of how they want the thing to be like? Do you have anything like that in an intervention?
Could you say that again? Sorry, if I have an example, is that what you were asking? No.
No. What I'm asking in the intervention part,
Okay.
do you have anything like touching base with the customer or final consumer?
Yeah, so this would be the output, right? So you touch, so the lives touch, number of lives touched, for example, could be how many people have, downloaded the app, how many have, went to our rooms, and so on. So this will be the customer focus here.
Okay, so there should be a feedback loop in there.
Yeah, ideally there's a feedback loop. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And I mean, this helps you again. So that was a good question, right? So to see if that actually works, right? So in terms of, are the resources, is the input actually, getting to an output? Because sometimes, and this is where design thinking and this idea of innovation comes in, it's really hard to connect these two in the beginning. But if you are close to your customer and you understand what the product or service could be, then this can be done in an easier way, I would say.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about this tool? So I think in terms of One Health challenges and in terms of your ideas so far, I think it could help to, map it out for once with, so either the SDGs, so on a very basic level, you could look at different SDGs and see, how are they connected, or what could be other SDGs that your project or innovation connects, or, in the future could connect to understand this interconnectedness of different aspects. And you could also use this tool to, visualize basically your understanding of what your impact will be. So what is kind of the goal of your innovation if you want to solve a problem, right? So how will you get from the input to the impact? And you could also think about, in terms of One Health constellations, to think about, what could be unintended consequences of your innovation, or how can you, maybe branch out and, integrate environmental issues, or, other issues that could be connected to this, large scale understanding of One Health.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, why did you think that this procedure or maybe this chain fits to the development of new products according to One Health? Because as I understand One Health as cooperation of many different issues. So what is the influence of a human on the I don't know, on the climate change, and the climate change on bacteria, or another or a microorganism, or I don't know, animals, for example, and then how the animals influences plants, for example. So I understand One Health as a very big cooperation, so many influences from one factor to another factor. So and as I understand your idea in the right way, I understand it as focusing on the only on the human behavior. So of course it's very important to change our habits according to I don't know, plastic bags, etc. Of course, but it's just such a small thing in this global, in this universal problem, which is One Health. So you know what I mean. I think it's of course it's important that human will change their habit. But in this big problem, which is One Health, when everything influences other things, so I don't see the how it fits together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So again, so this tool, for example, this is obviously only intended for a human perspective, right? So all of these tools are very human focused, right? So if you go beyond that, I think that, if you're smart, you can use these tools for something else as well, right? So if you look at, the input, output, outcome, impact. So this could be, on one level, just the target group of mothers, working mothers, right? So in terms of the meal rooms. At the same time, you can also use that to, broaden your understanding of, how is that interconnected? What are the ripple effects of, on different, agents or, reagents in this idea of One Health? So how could that contribute to somebody else, to something else, right? Because this is in and of itself, as I just mentioned, a very mechanical understanding of how change happens. But as you mentioned, and I think that's the idea of One Health, right? So this interconnection is way more complex. So this is why I mentioned systems mapping yesterday as one tool, right? But you can also use this and integrate it into the systems mapping, because systems are fluid all the time. And I think in terms of systems change, if that's interesting at all in, for you from a One Health perspective, I mean, there are different ways in which you can do that, right? Analyzing it, evaluating it. But I think in terms of innovation, it's always about, creating a change, right? So this is the focus of these days. So you can think about, what could be the unintended impacts, what could be the connections to other spheres, right? And this is how you can adapt that tool and saying, okay, it's not only about the user that we now define, the persona, the target group, but it could also, ripple out or have ripple effects to other stakeholders in that map, in that, complex situation. I think one of the challenges of, these large scale approaches like One Health and systems mapping is that it is so overwhelming, right? And I think this is kind of where entrepreneurship and innovation comes in. You have to start somewhere, right? And this is kind of the idea of these innovation days, right? So to give you the mindset to, we have to start somewhere, but then we have to learn if that actually creates positive or negative results, And I think this is one of the tools that, you know, can be used to make that more apparent, and then understand our behavior and understand the complexities of these systems. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, so I think so. So maybe your answer is that we should, for example, in such a complex issue like One Health, we should focus on the what was the big
The system? No.
Yeah. On this, and not only concentrate on the final customer. So
yeah. So I mean, you could say. So the basic idea of this is that you get a what's called a theory of change, right? So this is called. So what is your understanding of how you create a change in, you know, solving the problem, but also this could be related to One Health issues. Right, so if you have a good understanding of the problem and say, okay, by simply changing this little axis in the system, this has ripple effects for all other stakeholders, and then you can use that tool by understanding, okay, first of all, you map the system and see, okay, one of the issues in terms of One Health is kind of the interconnection between, or the transmission rate of, I don't know, bacteria to something else. What is the perfect or the best way to, you know, do an intervention? And this is one of the tools that you can use then. So it's, yeah, basically you have to, you know, you have like a backpack of full of methods, and you have to know when you use which kind of method and how they integrate or kind of connect to each other.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Because before we start with pitching, I would like you to, you know, spend some time now in iterating your ideas, you know, based on what you've done, or what has been, you know, the feedback that you received yesterday, but also look at these two tools. So either I would recommend the IOI, or on a more basic level, the SDGs, and think about the repercussions and impact that you want to achieve with your innovation. Because I think that's interesting. So we have two different perspectives now. So one is kind of the customer perspective. So what would he or she, you know, change in terms of your innovation? And this again is another perspective on things. So how, from an impact perspective, would you change it? Because maybe it's desirable for humans, but maybe it has negative effects that you want to avoid. And this could also be a reason why you go into a different direction. So this is another angle that helps you to, you know, get to the next level with your innovation.